Gormagat, Cian Corla. I welcome the opportunity to present the Health and Criminal Justice COVID-19 Amendment Bill 2021 to the House. I wish to inform the House that the purpose of this bill is to extend the period of application of certain emergency provisions that have been key to providing for the government's public health response to the pandemic. The emergency provisions that are to be extended are in the Health, Preservation and Protection and Other Emergency Measures in the Public Interest Act 2020, the Emergency Measures in the Public Interest COVID-19 Act 2020, the Criminal Justice Enforcement Powers COVID Act 2020 and the Health Amendment Act 2020. On the 9th of June next, certain emergency provisions in all of these acts are due to expire. The bill that I'm presenting to the House today provides that the operation of the emergency provisions concerned in these acts be extended for an initial period of 5 months to the 9th of November next. The current draft before the House provides that any further extensions are limited to a maximum of 3 months at a time thereafter, and that each extension must be approved by a resolution passed by each House of the Oireachtas. I'm proposing some changes which I hope will alleviate concerns which have been raised. We had a very good debate on the issue in the Seanad, and I also received a letter from the Chair of the Joint Committee on Health. I've reflected on the debate, on the views of the Health Committee and the wider issue itself. And I believe that the initial 5-month extension is warranted and necessary, and I believe it's proportionate. I understand concerns that have been raised about the possible additional extension after that 5-month period. I've decided to seek government approval to amend the bill at Dáil committee stage to provide for just one further extension of no more than 3 months, and this extension would be subject to a resolution of both houses of the Oireachtas. I'm of the view that given the current uncertain trajectory of the disease globally and the priority need to protect public health, progress on the vaccination programme notwithstanding, the emergency provisions are required until the 9th of November. At the same time, however, I am very conscious of the extraordinary nature of the provisions in question, and in particular the impact on fundamental and civil rights. That's why I'm now proposing that only one further extension of up to 3 months by resolution of both houses of the Oireachtas should be provided for in this bill. We do need these emergency powers to unwind the measures that are currently in place in an ordered and sustainable way, and I feel that allowing one further extension of no more than 3 months is justified and proportionate. If we do find ourselves in the position, which we all dearly hope not to be in, whereby we need some targeted public health measures beyond February of next year, we would introduce another bill and put it through the safeguards that the legislative process provides. The change I'm proposing is substantive. It is based on the views expressed across the political spectrum, views expressed by members of this House, members of the Seanad and in the Health Committee, and views which I share, Cian Corla. These legislative provisions are the platform from which we can implement measures to provide for protecting our health service and for breaking the chains of transmission of this disease. I know the House is fully aware of the continued precarious trajectory of this disease around the world, and indeed the epidemiological situation in Ireland is stable, but it is, as we're all aware, under constant pressure. The incidence of COVID-19 is still high, though as I said, it is stable. There are still considerable uncertainties around what measures may be needed over the course of the rest of this year. But we are united in our clear and ongoing objective to slow down and minimise the impact of this disease, and in so doing, protect the health of the public and dilute the impact of the disease on our society and on our economy. Some members of the Seanad on Monday referred to these powers as draconian, which is not an unfair description. In fact, I used the same description myself, both as Minister for Health and when I was Opposition Health spokesperson when the initial bill was brought in earlier last year. So while they are draconian, the measures concerned have provided us with the necessary tools to stop this disease from spreading uncontrollably, especially the exponential spread of it, and to help us keep people safe, first and foremost. Ultimately, the measures have provided the means to protect public health and to keep people safe. Members of both houses, here and in the Health Committee, have also sought for the legislation to be reviewed. This is entirely understandable. In terms of the measures taken under the legislation, government decision-making has been and is informed by public health, economic and social impact assessments undertaken on an ongoing basis throughout the pandemic. And as colleagues will be aware, there is a very rich source of information available online from NEFIT, the minutes of the NEFIT meetings, the papers discussed by NEFITs, the analysis that gets provided to me, gets provided to government by NEFIT on a weekly basis. The letters of recommendation from the Chief Medical Officer to myself are all available online as they should be. Government has consistently sought to introduce measures which are necessary to protect public health, and they're kept under constant review. The measures have been tough and they have been very challenging, but they have worked. They have saved lives. They have stopped a lot of things happening in this country which happened in other countries, which were deeply, deeply worrying to see. We've had one of the lowest excess mortality rates from COVID-19 in Europe, and the measures we introduced and the public support for them, arguably more importantly, ensured that unlike many other countries, while our health service ended up under very serious pressure, our health system was not overrun, our hospitals were not overrun, our emergency departments, our intensive care units were not overrun, thanks to the public backing the measures and thanks to the extraordinary work and ongoing work of our healthcare professionals. Vaccinations offer very significant protection at an individual and at a population level, but it is still going to be some time before there's a sufficient level of the population fully vaccinated. Moreover, while there is emerging evidence in relation to the efficacy and effectiveness of available vaccines, we still don't have full information in relation to the impact that vaccines have on transmission, the length of vaccine-induced immunity, and the potential impact that variants may have on vaccine effectiveness. In general, international agencies are continuing to advise the use of a range of non-pharmaceutical measures until there is a greater understanding of the role of vaccination on the course of the pandemic, and indeed there is a greater impact of the vaccinations on the disease itself. Specifically in relation to the date of November the 9th, which is proposed in the bill, this is a date that was informed by public health, with their view being that the measures might well be required into late autumn or early winter. Given that we expect to see a large amount of mixing indoors at that time. As I said, Ceann Comhairle, these measures are tough. They have been very, very difficult. We're all acutely aware of the impact of these measures on individuals, on families, on communities, on businesses, and on so much more. They have come at a serious cost, but they do work, and they have worked. And it is all our hope, I think, that the measures will only be needed for a very short time. Indeed, Ceann Comhairle, I've just come from a meeting with the Chief Medical Officer following NEFIT meeting today in relation to advice that we'll be bringing to Cabinet on Friday. And I'm very happy to report, as I'm sure members will be aware, that NEFIT's view is that the trajectory is positive. Again, thanks to the Irish people getting behind the measures day after day after day and keeping those case numbers low, keeping the hospitalisations low. I will now outline some provisions of the bill in more detail. The bill is divided into 5 sections. Section 1 of the bill amends Section 2 of the Health, Preservation and Protection and Other Emergency Measures in the Public Interest Act 2020 to allow for an extension of operation of Part 3 of the Act from the 10th of June 2021 to the later date of the 9th of November 2021. As I've set out already, I'm proposing to provide for only one further extension of no more than 3 months, subject to a resolution of both houses of the Oireachtas. The Health, Preservation and Protection and Other Emergency Measures in the Public Interest Act 2020 inserted sections 31A, 31B and 38A into the Health Act 1947. Section 31B allows the Minister for Health to make an affected area order. The state as a whole has been deemed to be an affected area since the 7th of April of last year. Section 31A provides for the making of regulations for preventing, limiting, minimising or slowing the spread of COVID-19 to a region where an affected area's order applies. Section 2 of the bill amends Section 1 of the Emergency Measures in the Public Interest COVID-19 Act 2020 to allow for an extension of operation of Part 5 of the Act along the same terms. That Part 5 of the Act is extended from the 10th of June 2021 to the date of the 9th of November 2021, or the date specified in a resolution passed by each House of the Oireachtas. As I've set out already, I'm proposing to provide for only one further extension of no more than 3 months, subject to a resolution of both Houses of the Oireachtas. The Emergency Measures in the Public Interest Act amends the Mental Health Act 2001 to adopt a cascading approach to the role of the independent consultant psychiatrist and the role of the mental health tribunals, which review orders involuntarily detaining patients, whereby pre-COVID measures are retained in the Act, but where it is not possible to operate these measures safely, there are provisions in place to ensure the review of detention can continue remotely in the current public health emergency. Sections 3 and 4 of the bill currently provide for the same amendments in terms of extension for the Criminal Justice Enforcement Powers COVID-19 Act 2020 and the Health Amendment Act 2020 respectively. However, as I've set out, I'm proposing to provide for only one further extension of no more than 3 months, subject to a resolution of both houses of the Oireachtas. The Health Amendment Act 2020 provides for the making of regulations to prescribe penal provisions in relation to regulations made under Section 31A of the Health Act 1947 to be fixed penalty provisions and dwelling event provisions. The Criminal Justice Enforcement Powers COVID-19 Act 2020 provides on Garda Síochána with statutory enforcement powers in relation to licensed premises and registered clubs to ensure strict adherence to public health measures on premises where alcohol is sold for consumption on these premises. In considering whether the Act should continue in operation, Minister Humphreys consulted the Garda Commissioner. Commissioner Harris advised that if the Criminal Justice Enforcement Powers COVID-19 Act 2020 was not extended beyond the 9th of June, then members of An Garda Síochána would not have a clear lawful basis for entering a licensed premises to address breaches of the COVID-19 regulations. Liquor licensing legislation would not provide a power of entry for the specific reasons of addressing breaches of COVID-19 public health regulations. Ceann Comhairle, I'd like to take the opportunity, if I may, to compliment the work of An Garda Síochána during this national effort. They've continued to take a measured approach at all times. They've continued to engage, educate, encourage, and only as a last resort enforce. And while we're talking about the Guards, Ceann Comhairle, can I add my voice to many in the House as to what happened yesterday with the shooting of 2 guards, and may I wish them a very speedy recovery and wish their families the very best. It was an absolutely despicable act of violence against An Garda Síochána. Section 5 of the bill provides for the title of the Act as the Health and Criminal Justice COVID-19 Amendment Bill 2021 and that it shall come into operation on the 10th day of June 2021. As I have said before here in the Oireachtas and elsewhere, these powers do not sit easy with me. I doubt they sit easy with any member of the Oireachtas, and they shouldn't sit easy with any democracy. However, I believe that they have been required up to now to support public health measures, advice and guidance. The government wants to lead our return to normality as quickly as possible. Importantly, we want to do it safely. We want to make sure that we don't go backwards and have to reintroduce measures. In conclusion then, I welcome this opportunity to provide an overview of some of the key provisions of the bill, and I look forward to discussing the bill in more detail at committee stage and today listening to colleagues' contribution during the second stage debate. The government believes that ensuring continuation of these measures is the responsible thing to do, and I commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
Many thanks.